This update is interesting, I have to say. To put it simply, I would not be surprised if people have mixed feelings on this update for so many reasons. Whether it was the pacing, or there isn't much action, or maybe a certain circle of the community find it way too much of a date quest, I certainly am not either in those boats. In fact, I find this Archon Quest to be amazing. I think the main reason is the appearance of the Hexen Circle, and we finally get to see a little bit more of the perspective of the Heavenly Principles, which may or may not further complicate a video I made not too long ago. But yes, in today's video, I'll be explaining the plot of the Archon Quest and we'll do some theorizing along the way. As always, don't forget to give this video a like and comment so the channel can be noticed by the algorithm. My name is Neko Gitsune and I make lore and commentary videos on this channel to keep you company. Durin is finally here. He is easily one of the most anticipated characters in the game because he has always been teased since 1.0 and also has strong combat capability. I personally am pulling for him myself, and if you need extra promo gems to pull for him, then allow me to introduce you to Loot Bar. Loot Bar is a reliable site for a fast, secure, and super reliable top-up experience for a Genesis Crystal. Additionally, they provide 25% discounts compared to normal prices in-game and supports consoles as well. During the period, you can also purchase the limited $100 package with special discount that lasts for 1 week and also Durin's guaranteed bundle. Once you start your top-up, they will only ask for your UID, nothing else, so your privacy is guaranteed and your items will arrive to your account in less than 2 minutes. If you like Melee Astro Wonderland, you can also top up Kernel Nexus Loot Bar the same way as you do it with Genesis Crystals. Over 30,000 Trustpilot reviews are showing their satisfaction after using Loot Bar, and if you have any problem with your transaction, their customer service is always available if you need assistance. Other than Genshin Impact, Loot Bar is also available for other games as well, such as Honkai Star Rail, Wuthering Waves, Zenless Zone Zero, etc. Click the link in the description below and register to get an additional 10% coupon that can be combined with all of the discounts and receive special discounts for returning customers. Now let's continue with the content. Usually when I make videos like this, I would do a whole recap and theorize along the way. However, I want to do something a little bit different this time, and instead of doing that, I'll just give you the TLDR of the quest and then explain the core lore after that. If you're an avid watcher of this channel, then you might find this format a bit of a culture shock, but for me, after I watched my twins roll in this Archon Quest, yes, Nicole is my twin, that's the moment I realized that I probably am explaining way too much. That's just how lore geek goes. Some even say that we're delusional, but it is what it is. But enough of that, let me give you a TLDR lore of what this Archon Quest is all about. The point of Act 5 and Act 6 is to celebrate the Moon Prayer Night, a festival that is done in Notcry whenever the moon is close to Teyvat. This is also the moment where Columbina will return to the moon, therefore it'll be her last night in Teyvat. During the preparation, strange phantoms suddenly appear in Notcry, and Columbina went missing because her powers were completely drained. So everyone, including the Hexen Circle, tried to find a way to find Columbina back, and the easiest way to do this is to find Columbina's real name. Using the phantoms that appeared, everyone found out that Columbina never had a real name to begin with because the moons no longer belong to Teyvat, and this is the reason why Columbina's power is always drained. Eventually, everyone decided to use the name Columbina as her actual name, and Columbina added another name to herself as Columbina Hyposelenia, meaning one who is born beneath the moon. Everyone then celebrates the Moon Prayer Night for Columbina's final night in Teyvat, and the moment her time to return, Dottore captures her and obtains the power of the 3 moons, thus gaining the power of reason, life, death, time, and space in the process. To stop Dottore, Columbina opened the moon gate and jumped to it, falling into the moon's reflection in the process, the same place that Revere and Thelindis jumped into. Everyone is understandably angry with this, including our Lekino, who will now fight as herself instead of Harbinger if the Saritsa won't do anything about it. The Archon Quest ended with a cliffhanger, and this is where Luna 3 Archon Quest officially ends. Or maybe to be continued. Either way, let me explain everything and theorize along the way. So these phantoms that appeared are the byproducts of what happens when the moon is close to Teyvat. That's at least what it should have been, because we learn in the quest that this is a recurring thing that happens whenever the Moon Prayer Night comes close. Part of it is that the Kuvaki energy is piercing through the false sky, and the false sky itself is being disturbed. However, we also learn in the quest that this one is different because there are more phantoms this time around, and not only that, humans and abyssal monster phantoms appear as well, which usually, according to not quite locals, this has never happened before. In fact, Llama said that you can't interact with these phantoms, but we learned that you can interact with them this time around when Durin told us that some abyssal monsters phantoms were trying to attack them. In this quest specifically, these phantoms reenact what happened in the past, and we learned that they are reenacting the events during Kyrian Cataclysm and Hyperborean events in the Funerary year. Now here is something that you need to know. This time, the event is different because according to Alice, the trigger is not only from the moon being close to Teyvat, but also a trilunar syzygy. You might already know by now, but most lore creators speculate that it's not possible for the trilunar syzygy to happen because 2 of the moons have already shattered. That is true indeed, because Alice further elaborates that 3 of the moons have finally formed a syzygy, an event that never happened since the Funerary year from 6,000 years ago, but not in a way that we expected. The trigger is in not quite specifically where 3 of the moons have gathered into one place. The Eternal Moon's Marrow is in the Traveler's possession, the Iridescent Moon's Marrow is in Arlekinon's possession, which, by the way, Alice told us that these should never appear in Teyvat to begin with, and Columbina as the representation of the Frost Moon's reincarnation. Now that's another factor on how the phantoms appears, but as to why the ending of the story even happens, well, that is something that you have to find out a little bit later. Allow me to edge you, alright? I promise you, it'll be worth your time. The next thing that we learn in this Archon Quest is the Traveler's spaceship. To be frank with you all, I'm quite disappointed that they don't elaborate much on the spaceship, let alone return to it, because it all happened so fast, and it feels like they forgot about it for the entirety of the quest. Of course, to be fair, it's not like that they can do anything about it, so it is what it is. However, let me indulge you a bit on what happened in this scene. So we already learned that the phantoms are reenacting events from 6,000 years ago to the Kyrian Cataclysm. So if that's the case, then the events in this scene likely happened close to the Kyrian Cataclysm, likely before that. One NPC said that his grandpa's grandpa already witnessed the spaceship, and in fact, his grandpa's grandpa's grandpa also claimed that it's already there since then. Of course, by subtitles, what I said is questionable, but I can assure you that's the case because in Korean, Farkas said halaboji 3 times, meaning grandpa's grandpa's grandpa. So if that's the case, then the traveler and his siblings should have arrived in Teyvat around 800 to 1000 years prior to the game's events, maybe even longer than that. We also learned that the spaceship is indestructible, and even the power of Kuvaki can't budge it. They even say that it's robust and indestructible, which makes you question why that's the case if the traveler's homeland was destroyed, right? I have a few theories on this. The first theory is that the people of Teyvat can't affect something that is beyond their world. Teyvat is like an interactive stage play. You can interact with them, but their ending will remain the same. Everything follows a script, and they are fated to end like what is already written. The spaceship is not from Teyvat, and the actors can't harm it because it's not within their script. It's just there for the actors to interact. Besides, the traveler was still in there when it all happened, and it's possible that the traveler's existence is the reason why it is still intact. Another possibility, and it's quite the obvious one from the very beginning, the materials are sturdy from the very beginning. Teyvat is said to be a world that is unremarkable according to the Voyager, so it's good to assume that worlds beyond Teyvat are a lot more advanced. In fact, people like Skirk's world already adapted to the Abyss and they don't even know that's the case to begin with, so it's possible that the materials from the Traveler siblings' world are just as advanced. In fact, this is quite a theme with the Descenders because even the 3 moon goddesses are not daring enough to challenge the heavenly principles, which now comes to our next topic. My twin sister Nicole, Hyperborea, the 3 moon goddesses, and the heavenly principles. I'll put them in one category because they are intertwined with each other. So, we finally get to meet the Hexen Circle in flesh, or at least 2 of them. One is Alice and the other is Nicole, who is confirmed to be an angel alongside other angels that are still alive, that being Yohual the Chuchtin and Sibai. the White Horse Adeptus. No, this is not a leak. This is from Zhongli's voice line that is already in the game. While he did not mention her by name, it is already mentioned by Xian Yun's locked voice line. Since Lantern Rite is the next update, at least timeline-wise, then Zibai should be our next playable 5-star character from Liyue. Anyways, Nicole is one of the only angels that is able to retain her preferred form and power. According to her, she doesn't have a long-term duty, which I assume to be with the Heavenly Principles or his shades, hence why we can see her like this. But when you think about it, Yohwal Techutin, Lord of the Night, being able to retain the form she has now means that she is likely way more powerful than any angels we knew of so far, if only she is not tied to guiding the people of Natlan. At least that's how I see it. But since Nicole explained it to be that way, then Zibai, as an angel, should also retain her form, as we already learned from Moonlit Bamboo Forest and Springs of the Hidden Jade. Nicole also said that she was already alive all the way from Hyperborean era, meaning she and the other angels are way older than most Archons in the game so far. Look, I don't want to mention Zibai again, but honestly, I really can't help but keep on mentioning her because in the book called Springs of Hidden Jade, she is also implied to be from Hyperborea, a kingdom that has already sunk according to the Ballad of the Fjords. You can read the book yourself if you haven't, but I promise you, I will make a video about her once her trip marketing is out. So before we continue with the angels talk, they also mention more about the 3 moon goddesses, NIBELUNG, and the heavenly principles later in the quest. For the timeline's sake of this history, we'll go to that part of the quest first, and I'm also going to mention the lore of the finale of the Deep Galleries. This is going to be a bit of a recap, but because a lot of this clashed a bit with the pre-existing lore, I will do my best to make the best sense out of the lore, and I will put a bit of my speculation along the way. So, according to Nicole, the 3 moon goddesses were created by NIBELUNG's will, which, if you don't know, is the primordial god of Teyvat and is also the king of the dragons. The moon goddesses were tasked by NIBELUNG to take care of Teyvat while he was away, but while he was gone for unknown reasons, the heavenly principles came. The 3 moon goddesses were nowhere strong to challenge him, but he did not see the moon goddesses as heretical entities either, since they are there to keep Teyvat alive. So, the moon goddesses ended up following the heavenly principles anyway because their lack of power. Of course, this becomes an uncertain predicament towards the sisters because if they do this, it is considered as a rebellion towards NIBELUNG and the dragons. But regardless, we'll continue this in a bit. Now back to the angels again and Hyperboreans. There are some weird lines in Nicole's dialogue and the lore so far, so bear with me as I'm trying to decipher them. According to Nicole, the people of Hyperborea received a lot of blessings from the angels already, which is something that we already knew because they are the envoys of the heavenly principles. However, these Hyperboreans continue their faith in the moon goddesses and are reluctant to accept the new order that the heavenly principles created. Now we learn in the finale of the Deep Galleries that people of Hyperborea worship the 3 moon goddesses with the angels continue to guide them. Since Nicole mentioned that she used to take care of them, it seems the Hyperboreans and the angels are not really at peace with each other, matching the description in the finale of the Deep Galleries that the Hyperboreans offended the angels at some point of time. During this time, the priests of Hyperborea were arguing with each other, pointing hands on who should meet the first angel and beg for forgiveness. The Voyager, in the form of a youth, offered himself to meet the first angel. The Voyager's name is Serdar Voinen, and the first angel's name is Koitar. After they met, the two eventually fell in love with each other and planned to rebel against the heavenly principles. The sisters learned about this and they themselves also thought of rebelling. With that, it is implied that the Frost Moon aided the Hyperboreans and Koitar to create the vase, and this is likely the something that Alice mentioned since she said that the moon goddesses did something to offend the heavenly principles. Remember when I mentioned an uncertain predicament? This soon becomes a bigger problem the moment NIBELUNG returns, already corrupted with the power of the Abyss. Now Zibai told us in Moonlit Bamboo Forest that the sisters argued and it led to their demise, and Nicole further elaborated that their argument is whether to take sides. One of them argued to follow NIBELUNG, who is their creator, while the other argued to not take sides because it will bring further demise to themselves. If I were to guess based on what we know, Arya, the Eternal Moon, Sonnet, the presumably iridescent moon, likely sided with Nibelung as she is corrupted by the Abyss after that, and Kanon, the presumably Frost Moon, likely takes no side because she became the guide for humanity at the end. Regardless, Nibelung found out about the sisters' disloyalty and imprisoned them in the process. In the meantime, he would use the moons to become a weapon to fight the heavenly principles. Worth noting that the moon goddesses and their moons are separate. So when I say the moon goddesses were imprisoned, it's the sisters that got imprisoned. The moons themselves were then used as a weapon by Nibelung. However, because of this, the moons are now seen as a huge threat to Teyvat. So the heavenly principles destroyed them with the frost moon left intact and flung it beyond the false sky. Because of this, the moons are now no longer part of Teyvat, their existence are rejected, and the moon goddesses slowly passed away while likely still being imprisoned. The heavenly principles, likely or likely not, knew about their imprisonment, but considering he no longer used the moons and created a new order after that, likely the celestial nails, he just left them be. Besides, the moon goddesses did offend the heavenly principles by creating the face, but regardless, Koitar and Seotarfoinen were punished by the heavenly principles. Koitar turned into a silly and her race faced the same consequences, their memories completely wiped, and the celestial nails were casted to punish the angels and to eradicate the forbidden knowledge and the abyss from Teyvat. However, this is also the time when the heavenly principles' powers are drained as stated by Neuvillette, and he was unable to use his authority to suppress the order of Teyvat. The nails are likely there to buy him some time until he meets the third descender, to which we can talk about in another video. Moving on, the Hyperboreans are left homeless and in despair after the war during the Funerary year, but it's likely that they have moved to not cry after Hyperborea sank. But of course, they carry on to worship their goddesses. Using a mass amount of Guvaki, they managed to create a connection with the real moon, but of course, they were disappointed as they found out that their moon goddesses are already dead. With no angels guiding them, they were left in a very sorry state at that time and left in despair. Now what happens after that is left unknown, but it's possible that they created false beliefs to their future generations to keep on praying to the frost moon that is still left intact, even though what they praised until now is the false sky. Thankfully, Lama already abolished this in Luna 1, so the Frost Moon Scions, despite still praying to the moon, now only pray to the true moon beyond the false sky. Now the ruins we saw are likely the same place when the Hyperboreans tried to contact the moon goddesses. Nicole said that it happened after the Funerary year, right after the moon goddesses already perished, so all this likely happened after Hyperborea perished, and what we saw is likely when they already moved to Not Cry. Even though it's called Hyperborean ruins, Nicole states at the very beginning that it's more so a portal that leads to a machine that the Hyperboreans created to make a connection with the moon goddesses. So at the end, no, this place is not Hyperborea, but ruins created by the Hyperboreans to create a connection with the moon goddesses. Hopefully that makes the timeline a bit clear, but yes, this adds even more clarity on the heavenly principles and Nibelung's side. I made a video about this not too long ago, and after what we just learned, I would say I am now more on the neutral than equivalent side. Here's the thing, Nibelung got corrupted by the Abyss, and for one of the goddesses to not take side makes sense, because the Abyss is the power to destroy everything. That being said, however, the core of the problem remains the same. The heavenly principles stole Teyvat, and that is already a well-known fact that even Focalor and Nahida admitted. The goddesses were forced to follow him because they are not strong enough to face them. He also left the goddesses whether he knew they were in prison or not, and yes, while he did what he did is to prevent Nibelung from destroying Teyvat, he still left them to die regardless. But even after all that, my stance now is that I am quite impartial towards the heavenly principles because at this point, no one is really evil or not. All of the entities in this game that are involved during the Funerary year have their reasons, it's just that their ways of doing things are just way too extreme. Since we talk about how the moon goddesses perished, This idea goes the same with Columbina. In the quest, our main job is to find her and restore her original body. According to Alice and Nicole, it's because of the moons that are now no longer part of Teyvat. People slowly forgot about them and their connection to the world is severed, resulting in their death in the process. The principles goes the same with Columbina, and in fact, is actually quite similar with how the Archons worked. You see, Nahida is the weakest Archon in the game, at least physically, because she was imprisoned by the sages of academia for 500 years, and the people praised the deceased through Kadavada instead of her. Only a small number of people worshipped Nahida, and is also the reason why she was able to explore the world via dreams. It was until now that she gained some strength because more people started to worship her. This goes the same with Columbina, who was able to retain her strength by having the people of Frostmoon Scions to continue worshipping her. Columbina, of course, eventually left and went to the Fatui, but even then, she also left and further severing her connections to the world, not helping that she gave away all of her powers to Tsaritsa, and it further weakens her. It adds even more with Lama, who severed the Frostmoon Scions' belief towards Columbina that her connection towards Teyvat are now completely severed. So, you see the pattern, right? Not enough connection towards Teyvat means you will disappear or be deceased from the world. What we see with Columbina is only the first step, and the reason she was able to hang on is because of the immense Kuvaki that exists in Outcry. Now, the easiest way to do this is to find Columbina's name, because name is an anchor that identifies one's existence. Names are always a crucial thing in Teyvat because it's also related to one's fate. This is also the reason why Tartaglia is theorized to be related to Ajax from Ballad of the Fjords, but that's a topic for a different day. Finally, the Dottore scene. I believe this is also quite a confusing ending for most people, hence why I am here to help. Remember when I talked about the Phantoms earlier? To put it simply, yes, how it all happened remains the same. The moon is close to Teyvat, the Phantom appears, and the trilunar CCG made it worse. However, there's one more thing that comes into play, and that is Dottore. We can interact with the Phantoms, remember? There are certain cases that we can't interact with them, but we can influence its surroundings, creating variables for the Phantoms in the process. The more variables you create, the likelier chance that the Phantoms will soon interact with you. So to put it simply in Razor language, Dottore took advantage of what happened during Luna 1 and Luna 2. He knew that Very will appear, and not only that, he lay low because he knew that Columbina will need the Moon Marrows to return to the moon. He uses this chance to interact with the Hyperborean Phantoms by using the variables that he created. But he did not enter the Hyperborean ruins with the Traveler, so how did he do that? Well, he didn't enter. It's the same like what Durin, Albedo, and Wanderer did. They did not enter the Hyperborean ruins, but because the Phantoms reenact things that happened during that time and the trio continued to create variables, it's only a matter of time before the Phantom notices. He even said it himself. He felt that he can always see them, it's just now that he could realize them. Remember, the Phantoms can see the present people, but because he was in a state of panic at that time, that's when he realized that the trio is always there to help him. Even though his fate and history remain unchanged, it created a false memory inside him that made him believe something else is happening. This likely happened the same way with Dottore. He did not enter the Hyperborean ruins, but he managed to make some Hyperboreans on the surface to notice him by creating variables, making them notice him in the process. Dottore deceived them by promising to create a new moon and resurrect the 3 moon goddesses, and by doing so, he asked the Hyperboreans everything needed to know about the 3 moon goddesses. He received the knowledge of the moons, and then he used that knowledge to create a false moon during the moon prayer night. The way the machine that teleported Columbina works is by sensing the Kuvaki. As long as the false moon resembles a moon more than the frost moon, Columbina will be teleported to that false moon instead. To put it another way, as long as the false moon has more Kuvaki than the frost moon, that's where Columbina will be teleported, to Dottore. And for the record, this is not a timeline error. Everything we experienced during the Archon Quest did not happen in just one day, but the span over a few days, and likely over a week by then. Nicole needed few days to even find the ruins, Llama, Arlecchino, and the Traveler needed 3 days for the Kuvaki transfusion to complete just to enter the ruins alone, and so Dottore had enough time to execute everything he learned during the Moon Prayer Night. Alice said that Dottore did this because he wanted to finish an experiment that needs the power of a god. This is actually quite consistent with him because the Scaramouche boss fight was also part of his experiment, or more specifically, a test trial. Turns out that he himself wants to be a god, and this actually answers why Dottore, or Zandik in this case, rejected Thought's gift in the last event. He doesn't need the power of a god because he himself wanted to become one. Now honestly, I have no idea what he is planning to do, and frankly, this topic deserves its own video because it's related to the heavenly principles, the shades, and his own fate. What I'm saying is that the rabbit hole is very deep with this one. But let me just say this, even if it's something that will do good for the people, you have to remember that he still experimented on humans and children alike, not helping that the most recent quest, he used Columbina as a vessel for power and she was in pain when that happened. One thing I noticed in him is that it's all related to the Irminsul, and it's very unlikely that the Irminsul has no play in this Archon Quest because something similar did happen before, more specifically in Inazuma where some phantoms also appear nearby the sacred Sakura's branches, and it all happened when the Abyss disrupted them. The concept is the same with this one, but instead of abyssal energy, it's an influence that came from Teyvat. Remember, Irminsul, Fate, Stella Fortunatus, and ley lines are connected to Teyvat's fall sky. So when something happens or there are certain changes, it will affect Teyvat's fall sky as well, hence why the Hex and Circle are there to maintain it. What happened with Albedo, Durin, and Wanderer was to test whether the influence was really from the outside or within Teyvat. Since Dottore was implied to want to burn the Irminsul, this could be the time where he could do the same. Also, it's hard to notice, but if you're a hardcore Sumeru fan, you might notice that Dottore's power is none other than the powers that came from King Deshret's civilization. It's fake, but the motives are the same. And not only that, the sound effects as well.
세 달이 모두 모였으니 실험도 최종 단계로 넘어가 볼까.
This is not surprising because Dottore came from Sumeru after all, and Sumeru itself is extremely intertwined with the three moon goddesses because Thoth and Nabu Malikatas existed alone. Thoth is described as the envoy of moons and stars, and Nabu Malikata has the closest relationship towards the three moon goddesses. In fact, King Deshret's obsession in rebellion was supported by Nabu Malikata, and she was also the one who gave him the knowledge that is outside of Teyvat in order to overthrow the absurd rules of the heavenly principles. Of course, I doubt that Dottore has any connection with Nabu Malikata and King Deshret, but since he was banished from Sumeru and left to wander around the desert, he likely found all of the knowledge that is needed to know about their civilization. In fact, I would dare to say that Dottore found out about this in the desert eventually and curious what it's all about, and it became his main project in the process. In the end, he used it as part of his sick experiments in Outcry today. So everything that is related to Sumeru is not just an Easter egg or filler content, but all of them are a foreshadowing of Dottore's grand scheme in the Song of Welkin Moon Archon Quest. Perhaps his grand scheme is to become the new heavenly principles himself. Now obviously the last one is a bit of a stretch, but I believe the concept is there. However, I also want to point out that the theory I made in this channel is becoming a lot more evident. I state that the heavenly principles likely used the power of the 3 moon goddesses in order to create the 4 shades, and it seems that pattern remained consistent because Dottore gained the power of reason, life, death, time, and space after he regained all of the powers of the 3 moon goddesses. But I also would like to assume that the iridescent moon has the most power left because her moon marrow reacted the most after Columbina jumped to the moon's reflection. But again, we can talk about this in another video where I'll talk about Dottore's grand ambition. Before I end this video, I just want to mention Alice being the final boss for the Traveler. If you know anything about Genshin, they like to use small, unremarkable, or just forgettable lines that seems to be a filler at first but turned out to be a very relevant one in the end. We learned that Alice and the Hexen Circle are always at the borders of Teyvat, so it's no surprise if they are related to the ruler of space, Asmodee. I made a theory in this channel that Alice is likely connected to Asmodee, and we kinda knew that we will meet Asmodee at the end of our journey. Since Alice states that she is going to be the final boss and whatnot, it will not be a surprise if she is indeed connected to Asmodee after all. But of course, that's just me thinking out loud here. Overall, this is a great Archon Quest. I can understand why a lot of people might not like it, but I do hope what I said here will make you understand and maybe chuckle a bit from the sheer stupidity of my theories. With that said, what do you think of this Archon Quest? Let me know in the comments below. Jana!